My name is Ethel, and I am 64 years old. Never in a million years did I imagine my daughter's dream beach wedding would turn into my worst nightmare. When Stephanie introduced me to Tyler, something about his perfect smile made my stomach knot. Call it a mother's intuition, but behind those flawless white teeth, I sensed a darkness lurking. Little did I know that intuition would save my daughter's future. If you're watching this video, I'd love to know where you're viewing from. Please hit like and subscribe before we dive into how a mother's love triumphed over deception. I've spent most of my life as a widow, raising Stephanie on my own after my husband John died from heart failure 20 years ago. We were high school sweethearts, married for 15 wonderful years before his health deteriorated rapidly. His death left a gaping hole in our lives, but it also forged an unbreakable bond between my daughter and me, or so I thought. Life as a single mother wasn't easy. I worked as an accountant for a small local business, earning just enough to keep us afloat. Every extra dollar went into Stephanie's college fund. I clipped coupons, shopped sales, and learned to stretch every penny. Our modest 3-bedroom home in the suburbs wasn't fancy, but it was filled with love and laughter. Stephanie was always a beautiful girl, honey blonde hair like her father's, my green eyes, and a smile that could light up any room. Smart as a whip, too, always at the top of her class. But she had a stubborn streak and was easily influenced by others, especially those she admired. In high school, she'd often come home wanting the latest designer jeans or electronics because everyone had them. I tried my best to teach her that value isn't measured by price tags, but sometimes I wonder if those lessons ever truly sank in. "Mom, I got accepted to Westfield University," she screamed one spring afternoon, waving her acceptance letter. My heart swelled with pride, but also sank with worry. Westfield was prestigious and expensive, but I couldn't bear to dampen her excitement. "That's wonderful, honey. We'll make it work somehow." I promised, already mentally calculating how many extra hours I'd need to work. And work I did. I took on bookkeeping for 3 additional small businesses on evenings and weekends. During summer breaks, I worked at the local department store. During Christmas, I gift wrapped at the mall. My hands often ached from typing. My eyes strained from staring at spreadsheets. But watching Stephanie thrive at college made every sacrifice worthwhile. She graduated with honors in marketing, and I've never felt prouder than watching her walk across that stage in her cap and gown. "This is for you, Mom," she whispered, hugging me tight after the ceremony. "I couldn't have done it without you." Within weeks of graduation, Stephanie landed a job at a prestigious marketing firm in the city nearly 3 hours away. I helped her pack up her childhood bedroom, smiling through the tears as she loaded the last box into her car. "Call me when you get there safely," I said, hugging her goodbye. "I will, Mom. I promise I'll visit often," she replied. Those visits became increasingly rare as Stephanie built her new life. Weekly phone calls dwindled to occasional texts. When we did speak, she'd tell me about her glamorous work events, the important clients she was impressing, the sophisticated colleagues who were becoming her new friends. I could hear her changing, adopting a polished accent that masked her suburban roots. "You should see my new apartment, Mom. It's in the trendy part of downtown. The rent is outrageous, but it's worth it to be around the right people," she'd say. I worried about her finances but didn't pry. She was an adult now, making her own choices. Instead, I focused on my own future. After 30 years of careful saving, I finally had enough to buy a small beach cottage. Nothing extravagant, just 2 bedrooms, a sunlit kitchen, and a weathered deck overlooking the ocean. It needed work, but I saw its potential. I spent weekends painting walls, refinishing floors, and planting a garden of salt-resistant flowers. This cottage would be my retirement haven someday. But more immediately, I hoped it would be a meaningful wedding gift for Stephanie when the time came. A place where she and her future family could create memories, where grandchildren could build sandcastles and learn to swim. After 2 years in the city, Stephanie called on a Sunday afternoon. I was on my deck watching the waves and sipping tea when my phone rang. "Mom, are you sitting down?" Her voice bubbled with excitement. "I'm engaged." My teacup froze midway to my lips. "Engaged to whom?" "His name is Tyler Williams. He's amazing, Mom. He works in finance lives in the penthouse apartment above mine. We've been dating for 6 months, and I was just hearing about him now." I swallowed my hurt and forced enthusiasm into my voice. "That's wonderful news, sweetie. I can't wait to meet him. We're coming to visit next weekend. You'll love him, Mom. Everyone does." I spent the week preparing for their visit, cleaning every corner of my house, planning meals, and trying to quell the uneasiness I felt. Why hadn't she mentioned him before? 6 months was a relatively short time to decide on marriage. But I reminded myself that when you know, you know. John and I had gotten engaged after 8 months, and we'd had a wonderful marriage. As I fluffed pillows and arranged fresh flowers, I tried to picture my daughter's fiancé. Would he be kind? Would he appreciate Stephanie for her heart and not just her beauty? Would he understand the value of family? I had so many questions, but more than anything, I wanted him to be someone worthy of my daughter's love. Little did I know that weekend would mark the beginning of the most challenging chapter of our relationship. One that would test the limits of a mother's love, and ultimately reveal just how far I would go to protect my only child. The day I first met Tyler remains vivid in my memory. I'd suggested a casual lunch at my home, but Stephanie texted last minute to say Tyler had made reservations at La Mer, the most expensive restaurant in town. I hurriedly changed from my comfortable slacks and sweater into my one good dress, a navy blue sheath I'd worn to a colleague's wedding years ago. When I arrived at the restaurant, they were already seated at a window table overlooking the harbor. Stephanie jumped up to hug me, looking more polished than I'd ever seen her. Designer dress professionally. Highlighted hair makeup that looked straight out of a magazine. But it was the man beside her who captured my attention. Tyler Williams stood about 6 feet tall, with dark hair expertly styled, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. His smile was blindingly white and perfectly straight. He extended his hand, his grip firm and controlling. "Mrs. Harrison, what a pleasure to finally meet you. Stephanie has told me so much," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Please call me Ethel," I replied, noticing he hadn't specified what exactly Stephanie had told him. The waiter appeared instantly, and Tyler ordered a bottle of champagne without consulting either of us. "We're celebrating after all," he announced. Throughout lunch, Tyler dominated the conversation, speaking at length about his career in investment banking, his luxury car collection, and the celebrities he'd met at various galas. He barely asked me any questions, and when I tried to share stories about Stephanie's childhood, he skillfully redirected the conversation. "That dress is quite traditional," he remarked when I mentioned I'd had it for years. "Stephanie and I should take you shopping sometime. My mother only wears this season's collections." I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment, but Stephanie didn't defend me. Instead, she nodded enthusiastically. "Tyler's mother is so elegant, Mum. She has the most amazing taste." I noticed other concerning behaviors throughout the meal. Tyler ordered for Stephanie without asking what she wanted. He checked his phone constantly, dismissing calls with a brusque, "Not important enough." When the bill came, he made a show of placing his platinum card on the table, then commented, "Almost $200 for lunch, worth every penny to impress my future mother-in-law, right?" The comment made me uncomfortable. Was I something to be impressed, a hurdle to overcome? On the drive home, I replayed the lunch in my mind. Tyler was handsome, successful, and clearly besotted with Stephanie's beauty. But had he once mentioned loving her intelligence, her kindness, or her sense of humor? I couldn't recall a single instance. Over the next few months, phone calls with Stephanie became increasingly centered on wedding plans and Tyler's accomplishments. The Stephanie I knew, who once volunteered at animal shelters and cried at sappy commercials, seemed to be fading away, replaced by someone obsessed with status and appearances. "Tyler says my marketing job doesn't suit someone of my caliber," she told me during one call. "Once we're married, I might quit and focus on charity work like his mother does. You know, galas and fundraisers." "Is that what you want?" I asked carefully. "Of course. Why wouldn't I want to be like the Williamses? They have everything." In early spring, Stephanie called with news about the wedding venue. "We've decided on Sea Glass Resort for the ceremony and reception," she announced. "It's the most exclusive beach property on the East Coast." I pulled up the resort on my computer while we talked. My eyes widened at the images of crystal chandeliers hanging over white sand beaches and infinity pools overlooking the ocean. "It looks beautiful," I said, "but also quite expensive. Have you considered my beach cottage? It's smaller, but—" Stephanie's laugh cut me off. "Mom, be serious. Your cottage is charming for weekend getaways, but it's hardly suitable for the social event of the season. Tyler's family would be horrified." The dismissal stung. I'd imagined her wedding there since the day I signed the papers, picturing a simple, elegant ceremony with the ocean as a backdrop. "Besides," she continued, "Tyler's father is on the board of directors for 3 Fortune 500 companies. Half the guests are potential clients for Tyler. This wedding isn't just a celebration, it's an investment in our future." I heard a deeper voice in the background. Then Stephanie said, "Tyler wants to talk to you." "Ethel," he said smoothly, "I hope you understand that people in our position need to maintain certain standards. The cottage idea is sweet, but we need a venue that reflects our status. I'm sure you want your daughter to have the best." "Of course I do," I said quietly. "I always have." After hanging up, I sat on my porch swing, watching the waves crash against the shore. The cottage suddenly seemed smaller, shabbier through their eyes. Was I being selfish, trying to impose my simple tastes on Stephanie's big day? Or was I witnessing my daughter being pulled into a world where appearances mattered more than authenticity? I decided to support her choice, despite my reservations. After all, this was her wedding, her future. I just hoped that somewhere beneath the designer clothes and new mannerisms, my compassionate, grounded daughter still existed. The first detailed wedding budget arrived in my email on a Tuesday morning. I nearly spilled my coffee when I saw the total at the bottom, $150,000. My entire retirement savings wouldn't cover even half that amount. The itemized list read like a luxury catalog. Venue rental at Sea Glass Resort, $35,000, catering premium package, $42,000, flowers imported, $18,000, live orchestra and contemporary band, $15,000, designer wedding gown, $12,000, photography and videography, $10,000, premium open bar, $8,000, custom wedding cake, $5,000, miscellaneous decorations and favors, $5,000. A note at the bottom written by Stephanie, but clearly influenced by Tyler, stated, "As discussed, we expect you to contribute $60,000 as the mother of the bride. Please confirm transfer details." As discussed. We had never discussed any specific amount. During our last conversation, I had cautiously mentioned that while I wanted to help, my resources were limited. Stephanie had brushed off my concerns, saying we'd figure it out. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. $60,000 was more than I earned in a year. It would deplete most of my savings funds I'd carefully accumulated for retirement and emergencies. The only way I could possibly raise that amount would be to sell my beloved beach cottage or take out a second mortgage. That evening, I called Stephanie, hoping for a rational conversation. "Honey, about the wedding budget," I began carefully. "I'm not sure I can manage $60,000. That's a significant amount for me." "Mom," Stephanie sighed with thinly veiled impatience. This isn't just any wedding. The Williams family has a reputation to maintain. Tyler's parents are contributing $90,000. I understand, but I need to be practical. What if we looked at some areas to trim costs? Perhaps local flowers instead of imported ones. Are you serious right now? Her voice rose. I'm not having some bargain basement wedding with grocery store flowers. This is the most important day of my life. I took a deep breath. Stephanie, I raised you to understand the value of money. A wedding is one day, but a marriage is a lifetime. Starting that marriage with financial strain isn't wise. The only strain is coming from you, she snapped. Tyler says you're being selfish. His mother warned him you might try to sabotage things because you're jealous of their wealth. The accusation felt like a slap. That's not fair or true. I'm trying to be responsible. Just figure it out, Mom. Everyone else is doing their part. She hung up before I could respond. That night I barely slept, tossing and turning as I considered my options. I could sell investments, take out loans, maybe even ask my sister for help. But a persistent voice in my head questioned whether this extravagance was really what Stephanie wanted, or if she was being influenced by Tyler and his family's expectations. The next day, I received a call from someone I'd never met, Tyler's mother, Victoria Williams. "Ethel, darling," she purred through the phone. "I thought it was time we had a little chat, woman to woman." Victoria spoke with the confidence of someone who had never worried about money a day in her life. She detailed her extensive contributions to the wedding, the rehearsal dinner at an exclusive yacht club, the honeymoon to the Maldives, the new car they'd present as a wedding gift. "Tyler comes from a certain background," she explained condescendingly. "We've always provided the best for him, and naturally we expect his wife to be accustomed to the same lifestyle. Stephanie has adapted beautifully. She has such potential." The way she said potential made it clear she found my daughter lacking, but salvageable. I gripped the phone tighter. "As for your contribution," Victoria continued, "I understand 60,000 might be a stretch for someone in your position, but surely you can make sacrifices for your only daughter's happiness. Perhaps that little beach house could be liquidated. It's not as if it's in a prime location." How did she know about my cottage? Had Stephanie described it as some worthless shack? "I'll handle my contribution in my own way," I said firmly, "and my cottage is not for sale." Victoria's laugh tinkled like ice in a crystal glass. "We all have our priorities, I suppose. I do hope you won't disappoint Stephanie. She's so excited about the wedding we've planned." The word "we" hung in the air. Who exactly was planning this wedding? It certainly didn't sound like the daughter I raised. Feeling overwhelmed, I called my oldest friend Janet and invited her for coffee at my cottage. Janet had known Stephanie since she was born and had always been my voice of reason. As we sat on my deck watching seagulls circle, I poured out the whole story. Janet listened attentively, her forehead creasing with concern. "Ethel, this doesn't sound like Stephanie," she said finally. "She was always such a sensible girl, and this Tyler character demanding such a large sum without any consideration for your circumstances, that's a red flag." "I keep telling myself she's just caught up in the excitement," I admitted, "that once the wedding is over, things will normalize." Janet set down her mug firmly. "Or maybe this is the beginning of a pattern. Financial control is often the first step in isolating someone. Has Stephanie been spending less time with her old friends? Changing her habits or appearance to please Tyler?" Her questions hit uncomfortably close to home. I thought about how Stephanie's calls had grown less frequent, how she'd changed her hairstyle, her clothing, even her way of speaking. "You might want to look into this, Tyler Williams, more carefully," Janet suggested gently, "before you liquidate your savings for this wedding." I wouldn't even know where to start, I sighed. "And I don't want to invade Stephanie's privacy or appear paranoid." "Better paranoid than penniless," Janet replied. Trust your instincts, Ethel. They've guided you well so far. Despite my reservations, I decided to temporarily acquiesce to the wedding demands. I called Stephanie the next day and told her I would contribute the requested amount. The relief and excitement in her voice momentarily eased my doubts. Perhaps I was overthinking things. Perhaps this wedding truly was her dream, not just Tyler's status symbol. I began the process of withdrawing funds from my retirement account, accepting the penalties for early withdrawal. Each form I signed felt like a betrayal of my financial security, but I reminded myself that supporting Stephanie had always been my priority. What I didn't tell her was that I had also decided to follow Janet's advice. Something about this situation didn't feel right. And before I handed over my life savings, I needed to be certain I wasn't funding a mistake my daughter would regret. The phone call came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, 3 months before the wedding. "Is this Ethel Harrison?" The woman's voice was hesitant, almost fearful. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Lucy Pearson. You don't know me, but I used to work with your daughter's fiancé, Tyler Williams." She paused. "Mrs. Harrison, there are things about Tyler you need to know before this wedding happens." My first instinct was to hang up. This could be a jealous ex-colleague or someone with a grudge. But something in her voice, a genuine concern, made me stay on the line. "I understand this is strange," Lucy continued, "but could we meet in person? What I have to share shouldn't be discussed over the phone." We arranged to meet the following day at a cafe 2 towns over, where there was little chance of running into anyone connected to Tyler or Stephanie. I arrived early, choosing a corner table with a view of the entrance. When a petite brunette in her 30s entered, scanning the room nervously, I knew it was Lucy. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I debated for weeks whether to contact you. My therapist finally convinced me it was the right thing to do." Lucy ordered a coffee with shaking hands. Once the server left, she pulled out a large envelope from her bag. "I was Tyler's executive assistant at Meridian Finance for 2 years," she began. "At first it was my dream job. Tyler was charming, successful, everyone wanted to be in his orbit. But behind closed doors, he's a different person." She opened the envelope and carefully laid out several documents. "Tyler has been married twice before. Both marriages lasted less than 2 years. Both ended after he systematically isolated and financially drained his wives." I stared at the divorce papers, feeling lightheaded. "Stephanie doesn't know. He told her he's never been married." "He tells everyone that," Lucy nodded. The divorces were handled quietly with substantial NDAs. His first wife, Amanda, was a doctor from a wealthy family. After they married, Tyler convinced her to invest her inheritance in his guaranteed investment schemes. She lost everything. His second wife, Diane, owned a successful boutique hotel. Somehow, by the end of their marriage, Tyler had transferred ownership to a holding company he controlled. Lucy slid forward more papers, bank statements, emails, legal notices. "Tyler's currently under investigation by the Securities Exchange Commission for several questionable transactions. His clients' portfolios have underperformed, while his personal accounts have grown. He's also deeply in debt. The luxury lifestyle is mostly smoke and mirrors at this point." "How do you know all this?" I asked, my mouth dry. Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "Because I helped him cover his tracks. I was infatuated with him, believed his promises that someday we'd be together. I ignored the red flags, the way he manipulated people, his explosive anger when challenged. It wasn't until I found the engagement announcement with your daughter that I realized I'd been used too." The cafe seemed to spin around me as I examined a photograph of Tyler with a blonde woman on a yacht, his first wife, according to Lucy. Another showed him at a charity gala with a different woman. Wife number 2. Both women resembled Stephanie, beautiful, polished, from good families. Both had undoubtedly believed they'd found their prince charming. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. Lucy met my eyes steadily. Because Tyler has a pattern. He targets women with assets or family money, isolates them from support systems, then takes everything. When I saw the wedding announcement mentioning Stephanie Harrison, daughter of accounting professional, Ethel Harrison, owner of prime beachfront property, she trailed off. I couldn't stay silent knowing what he might do to another woman. I sat back trying to process everything. I need to verify this information. Of course, Lucy nodded. Here's my contact information. I've also written down the names of people who can corroborate parts of what I've told you, former colleagues, a paralegal from the divorce proceedings. And this, she pushed forward a business card, is the contact information for the SEC investigator handling Tyler's case. On the drive home, my mind raced with terrible possibilities. If Lucy was telling the truth, my daughter was in grave danger, not physical perhaps, but emotional and financial. But if Lucy was lying, I risked destroying Stephanie's relationship and happiness based on false information. That evening, I contacted a former client who worked as a private investigator. Sam was discreet, thorough, and owed me a favor after I'd helped him organize his chaotic business accounts years ago. I explained the situation and asked him to verify Lucy's claims as quickly as possible. "Give me a few days," Sam promised. "And Ethel, if this guy is who you suspect, don't confront him directly. These types can be unpredictable when cornered." The week that followed was one of the most stressful of my life. I maintained normal communications with Stephanie, discussing wedding details as if nothing had changed. Each time she mentioned Tyler, my stomach knotted, wondering if I was speaking to a daughter who was being manipulated, or if I was the one being deceived by Lucy's claims. Sam called 5 days later, his voice grim. "Everything checks out, Ethel. 2 previous marriages both ended badly for the wives. Multiple complaints filed with the Securities Commission. Significant debt, despite the flashy lifestyle. There's more. He's been making inquiries about your beach property's market value and has already contacted a real estate attorney about how to transfer property between family members." My blood ran cold. "He's planning to get my cottage." "Based on the pattern, I'd say he's planning to get Stephanie to convince you to transfer the property to her. Then he'll gain control once they're married. There's also evidence he's encouraging Stephanie to be added to your accounts for estate planning purposes." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The extravagant wedding that required my financial participation wasn't just about status, it was about depleting my resources. The dismissive comments about my cottage being not prime real estate were designed to make me think it wasn't valuable enough to protect. "What do I do, Sam?" I whispered. "You've got evidence now," he replied. "The question is how to present it to Stephanie in a way she'll believe. These guys are masters at manipulating emotions. He'll spin any accusation as jealousy or paranoia on your part." I thanked Sam and sat alone in my kitchen, watching the sunset over the ocean through my window. The beautiful view that had once brought me peace now seemed threatened, like everything else I valued. I thought about Stephanie, how excited she was about the wedding, how she glowed when she talked about her future with Tyler. Could I really shatter her dreams based on documents and testimonies from strangers? But then I remembered my responsibility as her mother. Sometimes love meant making painful choices. Sometimes protection required courage. I needed a plan, one that would reveal the truth in a way Stephanie couldn't ignore or dismiss. And it would need to happen before I handed over my savings or any property rights. The pre-wedding events were beginning in just 2 weeks with the rehearsal dinner and welcome party at the beach resort. As I formulated my approach, I realized I might lose my daughter in the process of trying to save her. The thought brought me to tears, but I wiped them away resolutely. If protecting Stephanie meant she might hate me for a time, it was a price I was willing to pay. The Sea Glass Resort lived up to its reputation. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, showcased the magnificent ocean view, and impeccably dressed staff glided between guests, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I felt distinctly out of place in my best dress, a simple blue sheath that had seemed elegant in my hometown, but looked downright frumpy amid the designer gowns and custom suits. The rehearsal dinner wouldn't take place until tomorrow, but tonight was a welcome cocktail party for out-of-town guests. I had arrived early, hoping to have a private moment with Stephanie before the festivities began. But she was constantly surrounded by Tyler's friends and family. From across the room, I watched my daughter laugh and mingle. She looked beautiful in a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. But there was something different about her smile, a tightness that hadn't been there before. And I noticed how her eyes frequently darted to Tyler, as if checking his reaction to her every move. Tyler worked the room like a politician, his arm possessively around Stephanie's waist, guiding her from group to group. He introduced her to important business associates, smoothly interrupting whenever she spoke too long, or veered off what seemed to be a prescribed script. Victoria Williams. Tyler's mother held court near the bar. Her silver hair perfectly coiffed diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists. She air-kissed arriving guests, her gaze coolly assessing everyone's attire and status. When she spotted me, her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Ethel, darling, you made it," she said, touching my shoulder with manicured fingers. "Such a sensible outfit. So refreshing in these days of excess." Before I could respond to the thinly veiled insult, she was swept away by another guest, leaving me alone with my champagne flute. I sipped slowly, gathering my courage for what was to come. The folder containing all the evidence Sam and Lucy had provided was tucked safely in my handbag. I had made copies, leaving the originals in the hotel safe. Whatever happened tonight, there would be no going back. I finally managed to approach Stephanie when she stepped away to the ladies' room. Waiting outside, I caught her arm gently as she emerged. "Mom, there you are," she said, her smile genuine but strained. "Isn't this amazing? Tyler arranged everything." "It's very impressive," I agreed. "Stephanie, could we talk privately for a few minutes? There's something important." "There you are, sweetheart," Tyler's voice interrupted as he rounded the corner. "Your father is looking for you. He wants to introduce you to the governor." His eyes flicked dismissively over me. "Ethel, I hope you're enjoying yourself. The shellfish canapés are particularly good, although perhaps a bit extravagant for your taste." "Actually, Tyler, I was hoping to speak with Stephanie alone for a moment," I said firmly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm afraid that will have to wait. The governor can only stay another half hour, and this connection is crucial for our future." He emphasized "our" while taking Stephanie's elbow. "You understand the importance of networking, don't you, Ethel?" Before I could protest, he was steering Stephanie away, whispering something in her ear that made her glance back at me with a frown. I retreated to a quiet corner, watching the party from a distance. Throughout the evening, I made several more attempts to speak privately with Stephanie, but each time Tyler or Victoria materialized, creating a buffer between us. It became increasingly clear that they were deliberately keeping us apart. As the evening wound down and guests began departing, Tyler finally approached me directly. His smile was confident, almost smug. "Ethel, I'd like to discuss the financial arrangements. Perhaps we could step onto the terrace." His tone made it clear this was not a request. The terrace was deserted, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and expensive floral arrangements. Tyler's demeanor changed immediately once we were alone, his charm evaporating like morning mist. "Let's cut to the chase," he said, leaning against the railing. "The wedding is in 3 days. I need confirmation that your contribution has been transferred to the wedding account." "My contribution?" I kept my voice steady. "The $60,000 we agreed upon." His eyes narrowed. "Stephanie mentioned you were having some hesitations. That's not acceptable at this stage." "It's a significant amount," I said carefully. "Almost all of my savings." Tyler's laugh was cold. Come now, Ethel. We both know you have assets. That quaint little beach house, for instance. If liquid cash is an issue, I know several excellent mortgage brokers who could help you access that equity. The predatory look in his eyes confirmed everything Lucy and Sam had told me. This man wasn't just marrying my daughter, he was targeting our combined assets. And if I can't provide the money, I asked, testing his reaction. Tyler's face hardened. Then you'd be letting down your only daughter. More importantly, you'd be embarrassing my family in front of our social and business circles. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Let me be perfectly clear, either you contribute as agreed, or you won't be welcome at this wedding. Your choice. Are you threatening to exclude me from my own daughter's wedding over money? I kept my voice even, though my heart pounded. I'm simply explaining the consequences of your actions, he replied smoothly. Stephanie supports me on this, by the way. As if on cue, Stephanie appeared at the terrace doorway. There you are, she said, looking between us with confusion. Is everything okay? Tyler's expression instantly transformed back into charming fiancé. Just having a heart-to-heart with your mother about the wedding finances, sweetheart. She seems reluctant to fulfill her commitments. Stephanie's face fell. Mom, you promised. We've already paid deposits based on your contribution. I'm trying to explain to your mother that without her share, certain elements of our special day will have to be cancelled. Tyler added, his arms sliding around Stephanie's waist. Unfortunately, that might include some of your favorite details, like the fireworks display and the designer floral arrangements. I watched my daughter's expression shift from disappointment to anger. The manipulation was so obvious to me now, but Stephanie was completely under his spell. Why are you doing this? She demanded, her voice rising. Is it because you don't approve of Tyler? Or because you're jealous I'm moving up in the world while you're stuck in your little accounting job and shabby beach house? Her words stung, but I recognized they weren't entirely her own. These were thoughts planted by Tyler and his family. That's not it at all, I began, but Stephanie wasn't finished. If you can't support my happiness, then maybe Tyler's right. Maybe you shouldn't come to the wedding. Maybe you should just go back to your cottage and enjoy your solitude. After all, that's what you'll have to look forward to growing old alone in some retirement home, because you couldn't be happy for me. I felt as though I'd been slapped. This wasn't my daughter speaking, not the girl I'd raised who had once made me homemade soup when I had the flu, who had written me poems on Mother's Day. This was someone else entirely. Someone who had been manipulated and molded by the man beside her. Instead of reacting with anger or hurt, I did something that clearly surprised them both. I took a sip of my champagne, smiled calmly, and spoke softly. You two seem to think you've figured everything out, but you forgot one important thing. Tyler's confident expression faltered slightly. And what might that be? I reached into my handbag and pulled out the folder. The truth always finds its way to the surface, Tyler. Or should I call you Theodore Tyler Wilcox? That is your legal name according to your first 2 marriage certificates. The blood drained from Tyler's face. Stephanie looked between us, confusion clouding her features. What is she talking about? She asked him. What marriage certificates? Your mother is obviously confused, Tyler said quickly, reaching for the folder. Or deliberately trying to sabotage our relationship with fabricated documents. I held the folder out of his reach and addressed my daughter directly. Stephanie, I love you too much to stay silent. Tyler has been married twice before. Both marriages ended after he financially ruined his wives. He's currently under investigation by the Securities Exchange Commission for financial fraud. And he's been making inquiries about how to transfer ownership of my beach cottage once you two are married. That's absurd. Tyler sputtered, his charm completely evaporated. Stephanie, your mother is clearly unstable, probably jealous of our happiness, just as I warned you. Stephanie stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. Let me see the folder, Mom. Don't, Tyler grabbed Stephanie's arm. "This is exactly what she wants to create doubt between us, right before our wedding." I opened the folder and began removing documents, the marriage certificates, divorce decrees, financial records, and statements from his previous wives. I had everything verified by a private investigator, Stephanie. And there are 2 people here tonight who can confirm what I'm telling you. "What people?" Tyler demanded, his voice rising with panic. On cue, 2 women stepped onto the terrace from different doorways, both blonde, both elegant, both with expressions of grim determination. I had contacted Amanda and Diane Tyler's ex-wives through Lucy's connections. Despite the non-disclosure agreements they had signed, both had agreed to come when I explained that another woman was at risk. "Hello, Theodore," said the older of the 2 women. "It's been a while." Tyler's face contorted with fury. "This is a set-up security key," he shouted towards the main room. Guests began turning toward the commotion, some stepping onto the terrace to see what was happening. Victoria Williams pushed through the crowd, her face a mask of controlled rage. "What is the meaning of this?" she hissed. "Tyler, handle this immediately." But Tyler seemed incapable of handling anything. He was backing away from his ex-wives, looking wildly for an escape route. "Tyler," Stephanie's voice was small, confused. "What's going on? Who are these women?" Amanda stepped forward. "I'm his first wife. We were married for 18 months, during which time he convinced me to invest my entire inheritance in his foolproof investment scheme. I lost everything, nearly $2 million. And I'm wife number 2, Diane added. After our wedding, he gradually took control of my boutique hotel business, transferred the assets to a shell corporation, and left me with nothing but debt when he filed for divorce." The terrace had fallen silent as guests watched the drama unfold. Victoria attempted to intervene, placing herself between Tyler and the growing crowd. "This is preposterous. My son is a respected businessman. These women are clearly after his money, just like—" She stopped abruptly, perhaps realizing she'd been about to include Stephanie in her accusation. "It's all lies," Tyler insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. "Stephanie, baby, you know me. You know I love you. Your mother has orchestrated this whole thing to keep us apart." Stephanie stood motionless, her face pale as she looked from Tyler to me, to the ex-wives and back again. Then, with trembling hands, she reached for the folder I still held. "Let me see everything," she whispered. As she began examining the documents, murmurs spread through the growing crowd of guests. I could hear snippets of conversation, people who had known or worked with Tyler recounting their own concerning experiences with him. "He borrowed $50,000 from me 2 years ago, never repaid it. Remember how he tried to get involved in your grandfather's estate planning? Always asking about property values and investment portfolios at dinner parties. Tyler's carefully constructed world was unraveling before our eyes. And as the final threads came loose, the charming facade gave way to something ugly and desperate. "This is all your fault," he suddenly shouted, lunging toward me. "You couldn't stand seeing your daughter happy. You couldn't stand not being the center of her world anymore." Security guards, alerted by the shouting, appeared at the terrace entrances. But before they could intervene, chaos erupted as Tyler knocked over a champagne tower in his rage, sending glass and liquid spraying across the expensive dresses and suits of nearby guests. In the confusion that followed, I reached for Stephanie, pulling her away from the shattered glass and Tyler's unpredictable fury. For the first time in months, she didn't resist my protective instinct. Instead, she clutched my arm, her body trembling as her perfectly orchestrated pre-wedding celebration disintegrated into scandal and recrimination. The fairy tale wedding was over before it had begun. And though my heart ached for my daughter's pain, I knew that sometimes the most precious gift a mother can give is the truth, even when it comes wrapped in heartbreak. Hours later, Stephanie and I sat in my hotel room, an untouched room service tray between us. Security had escorted Tyler from the resort after his outburst with Victoria, trailing behind hissing threats of lawsuits and social ruin. Most guests had dispersed in uncomfortable silence, while a few close friends of Stephanie's remained in the lobby, offering support from a distance. "I still can't believe it," Stephanie whispered, staring at the documents spread across the bed. 2 years of my life. I was so sure he loved me. The tears I'd been expecting hadn't come yet. Instead, Stephanie seemed to be in shock, methodically reading every page I had collected, occasionally asking clarifying questions with an emotionless voice. "He was very convincing," I said gently. "From what his ex-wives told me, manipulation is his specialty." "But I should have seen the signs." She looked up, her eyes hollow. "They were all there. The way he isolated me from my friends. How he criticized my career until I was ready to quit. The constant pressure about money and status." "We see what we want to see sometimes," I replied, remembering how I had initially dismissed my own concerns. "Especially when someone knows exactly what we long for." Stephanie picked up her engagement ring, a massive diamond that caught the lamplight. "He knew I wanted security, success, a life different from—" She trailed off, looking ashamed. "Different from the one I gave you," I finished for her. "Mom, no," she began, but I raised a hand. "It's okay to want more than what you had growing up. I always wanted that for you too. But there's a difference between ambition and being ashamed of your roots." Stephanie's face crumpled. "I was awful to you. The things I said about your home, your job. I don't even recognize that person. It's like I became someone else around him." "That's how abusers work," I explained. "They don't start with control and isolation. They begin with charm, with providing exactly what you think you want. The rest comes so gradually, you hardly notice." "He almost had me cutting you out of my life completely," she whispered. "He said once we were married, we'd need to reassess our family connections, that some people drag you down with their limited mindsets." A chill ran through me as I imagined what might have happened had the wedding proceeded. How many holidays would have been missed? How many calls would have gone unreturned? How long before my daughter became a stranger, completely under Tyler's control? "When did you first suspect something was wrong?" Stephanie asked, gathering the documents into a pile. I told her about Lucy's call, about hiring Sam to investigate, about contacting the ex-wives. "I was terrified you wouldn't believe me, that he had poisoned you against me so completely that any warning would just push you further away." "That's exactly what would have happened if you'd just told me," she admitted. "I needed to see the evidence to see his reaction when he lunged at you." She shuddered. In that moment, the mask completely dropped. We fell silent, the weight of what had almost happened hanging between us. Outside, waves crashed against the shore, the same ocean that bordered my little cottage, though here it was framed by luxury and exclusivity. "I should call the wedding planner," Stephanie finally said. "Cancel everything. The flowers, the caterers, the photographer. We can handle that tomorrow," I assured her. "Right now, you need rest." "What about the guests? Some people flew in from Europe, and the deposits will lose thousands." "Money can be replaced," I said firmly. "Your future can't be." Stephanie's composure finally broke. Tears streamed down her face as she covered her mouth to stifle sobs. I moved beside her, gathering my grown daughter into my arms, just as I had when she was small and had fallen off her bicycle or been teased at school. "I'm so embarrassed," she cried. "Everyone will be talking about this. How stupid I was. How blind." "You weren't stupid," I countered, stroking her hair. "You were targeted by someone who makes his living manipulating people. And you were brave enough to face the truth when it was presented to you. That takes courage." "I don't feel brave. I feel broken." "Broken things can be mended," I told her. "Sometimes they become stronger at the broken places." We stayed like that for a long time, mother and daughter, reconnecting after months of growing estrangement. Eventually, Stephanie's tears subsided and exhaustion took over. I helped her into bed, just as I had when she was small, and sat beside her until her breathing deepened into sleep. As I watched over her, I thought about the long road ahead, the embarrassment of cancelling a high-profile wedding, the painful explanations to friends and family, the potential legal complications if Tyler decided to pursue his threats of lawsuits. There would be difficult days to come. But I also felt an overwhelming sense of relief. My daughter was safe. The manipulator who had nearly separated us forever was gone. And in his absence, perhaps we could rebuild what had been damaged, not just our relationship, but Stephanie's confidence and sense of self. I gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, remembering how I used to do this when she had nightmares as a child. "I'll always be here," I whispered, though she couldn't hear me. "No matter what." The path ahead might be rocky, but we would walk it together. And someday, when the pain had faded, perhaps Stephanie would find real love, the kind based on mutual respect and shared values, not manipulation and materialism. For now, though, it was enough that she was sleeping peacefully, free from the influence of someone who had nearly stolen her future. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But tonight, in the quiet aftermath of chaos, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The weeks following what should have been Stephanie's wedding day were challenging in ways I hadn't anticipated. After the dramatic confrontation at the resort, we retreated to my cottage, away from prying eyes and gossip. Cancellation fees mounted as we dismantled the elaborate wedding plans. Tyler's threats of lawsuits materialized into actual legal notices, though his position weakened considerably when the Securities Exchange Commission expanded their investigation based on new evidence. But the most difficult aspect wasn't financial or legal. It was watching my daughter struggle with grief and shame. "I keep replaying every moment," Stephanie confessed one evening as we sat on my deck watching the sunset, "trying to pinpoint when I should have known. There were so many red flags." "Hindsight makes prophets of us all," I said gently. "You can't torture yourself with what you should have seen." The first week, Stephanie barely left her childhood bedroom. She slept until afternoon, refused most meals, and spent hours staring at the ocean through the window. I respected her need for space while ensuring she wasn't alone with her dark thoughts for too long. On the 10th day, I knocked on her door with a steaming mug of tea. "I thought we might walk on the beach today," I suggested, "just to the cove and back." Stephanie looked pale and drawn, her previously perfect appearance now disheveled. "I'm not ready to see people," she mumbled. "Everyone knows by now." "It's Tuesday morning in September," I pointed out. "The beach will be deserted except for a few seagulls." Reluctantly, she agreed. We walked slowly along the shore, the cool water occasionally washing over our bare feet. Neither of us spoke until we reached the rocky outcropping that marked the boundary of my property. "I said terrible things about this place," Stephanie said, suddenly, looking at the modest cottage up on the bluff. "Called it shabby and embarrassing, but it's actually beautiful." "It needs work," I admitted. "The deck railing is wobbly, and the kitchen cabinets are outdated. But it's home. Tyler wanted me to convince you to sign it over to us," she confessed, her voice breaking. "Said it was the sensible thing for estate planning. He had already contacted real estate agents about selling it once it was in our names." I had suspected as much from Sam's investigation, but hearing it confirmed still hurt. "What would you have done with the money?" "Invested in one of his ventures," she replied bitterly, which I now know means it would have disappeared into his offshore accounts. We continued walking the rhythm of the waves, providing a soothing backdrop to difficult conversations. Gradually, day by day, Stephanie began to heal. She helped me fix the wobbly deck railing, painted the kitchen cabinets rather than replacing them, and started taking daily swims in the ocean, regardless of the weather. "The cold water helps," she explained. "It shocks my system, reminds me I'm alive, that I survived." As September turned to October, new routines emerged. Stephanie contacted her old employer and secured her marketing position back. She reconnected with friends she had neglected during her relationship with Tyler. She even joined a support group for survivors of psychological and financial abuse, where she found understanding without judgment. Some days were harder than others. The day Tyler's engagement announcement to another woman appeared in the society pages, barely 3 months after our confrontation. Stephanie retreated to her room again, questioning how she could have been so easily replaced. The day Victoria Williams was overheard in a salon, spreading rumors that Stephanie had suffered a nervous breakdown, sent her into a spiral of anger and hurt. But with each setback came new strength. I watched my daughter rediscover herself, not the polished, status-conscious woman Tyler had molded, but the authentic, compassionate person she had always been. "I'm thinking of volunteering at the animal shelter again," she told me over breakfast one morning. "I used to love it before Tyler said it wasn't appropriate for someone of your social standing." I finished when she hesitated. She nodded, looking embarrassed. "It sounds so ridiculous now. Who cares about social standing when you're helping creatures who need you?" By the time the holidays approached, Stephanie had found an apartment in town close enough to visit regularly, but allowing her the independence she needed. She insisted on hosting Thanksgiving dinner there, cooking the entire meal herself, something the Tyler-influenced Stephanie would never have considered. "Remember how he insisted we needed a personal chef for dinner parties?" She laughed as she mashed potatoes, as if cooking for people you love is beneath anyone's dignity. As winter turned to spring, I noticed Stephanie mentioning a new name with increasing frequency. Michael, a graphic designer she collaborated with on marketing campaigns. Unlike Tyler's instant charm offensive, this relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared work. "He asked me to dinner," she announced one Sunday during our weekly beach walk. "I said yes, but I'm terrified." "That's understandable after what you've been through," I said. "I've told him everything," she admitted. "About Tyler, the cancelled wedding, all of it. I thought he'd run in the opposite direction, but he just thanked me for trusting him with my story." 6 months later, I watched from my deck as Stephanie introduced Michael to the joys of building sandcastles at sunset. He was nothing like Tyler, more casual in appearance, more genuine in manner, more considerate in his actions. When he asked my opinion about a local restaurant for their date night, I recognized it wasn't an attempt to impress me, but a sincere interest in my thoughts. "He's good for her," my friend Janet observed during one of his visits. "Notice how he doesn't try to change her. How he listens when she speaks, on the 1-year anniversary of what would have been her wedding day." Stephanie suggested we host a small gathering at the cottage, a celebration of dodging bullets, as she called it. We invited Janet, a few of Stephanie's closest friends, and yes, Michael, who by then had become a regular presence in our lives. As evening fell, someone suggested moving to the beach for a bonfire. We gathered driftwood, arranged blankets on the sand, and lit a small fire within a ring of stones. The flames cast a warm glow on familiar faces as conversation and laughter flowed freely. During a lull in the conversation, Stephanie cleared her throat. "I want to thank all of you, especially Mum, for standing by me during the darkest period of my life. A year ago, I thought I had lost everything. But looking around tonight, I realize I've gained something: invaluable authenticity, real relationships, a life based on substance rather than appearance." She raised her mug of hot chocolate. "Here's to truth, even when it hurts, and to mothers who are brave enough to deliver it." Later, as guests departed and Michael helped clean up, Stephanie pulled me aside. "Michael asked if I'd consider moving in with him," she said. "His lease is up next month." "That's a big step," I replied carefully. "How do you feel about it?" "Cautious but not afraid," she answered after consideration. "This isn't like before. We're equals. We discuss everything, compromise when needed. There's no manipulation, no hidden agenda." You've learned to recognize the difference, I observed. Because of you, she said, squeezing my hand. You showed me that love doesn't diminish you, it helps you grow. It doesn't demand sacrifices, it inspires gifts freely given. 3 months later, I helped Stephanie move into the bright, airy apartment she would now share with Michael. As we arranged her books on shelves and debated furniture placement, I felt a deep contentment. My daughter had emerged from the chrysalis of pain, stronger, wiser, and more authentic. That evening, back at my cottage, I sat on the deck watching stars appear over the ocean. The beach house that Tyler had coveted remained mine, a sanctuary that had sheltered my daughter through her healing, and would someday welcome grandchildren to build sandcastles and collect seashells. The path to this moment had been painful but necessary. Sometimes love requires difficult choices. Sometimes protection means risking rejection. Sometimes the greatest gift a mother can give is not blind support, but unwavering truth, even when that truth shatters illusions. If you've ever faced a moment where you had to choose between comfortable lies and painful truths, I hope you found the courage to choose truth. If you've supported someone through the aftermath of betrayal, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Your experiences might help others facing similar challenges. Please like this video. If it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of resilience and healing, and share it with someone who might need to hear that there's life after devastation, often a richer, more authentic life than we could have imagined. Thank you for listening, and remember, the storms that test us most often reveal our greatest strength.